Hi everyone, Melissa Bruner here in our WIBW Plus Digital News Center, hopping on for a few moments to let you know what's going on with something that some of you have been contacting our newsroom about that's drawing a little bit of attention. You can smell it if you step out the door in the capital city. You might see it, a haze around the area. It smells like smoke out there, and it is not your imagination. In fact, take a look from our Menninger Hill tower cam and you can see that haze just hanging over the capital city. We had a suspicion what this was, and we reached out to Eric Johnson at the Metropolitan Topeka Airport Authority, and that suspicion is correct. Routinely, several times a year, what they do is they burn some of that dry vegetation around Topeka Regional Airport and Forbes Field, and that's what is happening out there today. They started doing the routine burning on the airfield and the infield area. The conditions weren't ideal. It sparked the significant smoke, so they're not doing that effort anymore, but they are doing some burning still on the south end of the property. Again, this is the Menninger Hill camera. You can see a thick blanket of haze over the city. You can see it a little bit. This is our Axe and Ale camera from Evergy Plaza in downtown Topeka. It kind of looks up in the air a little bit, and you can see the State House dome, Jayhawk Tower, all kind of shrouded in that smoke. And then here we are from the Jayhawk Tower cam looking back toward the State House. Not as obvious there, but there is still some of that smoke. Again, though, the view in West Topeka, from Topeka's west side from our Menninger Hill camera, you can definitely see the smoke hanging over the area. Why do they do this? Why do they do this controlled burning on the vegetation? Of course, if you've lived in the area a while, you're familiar with what happens in the Flint Hills. They burn off that dry vegetation in the springtime. It helps the ecosystem, sparks new growth of the new vegetation. Around the airport, some of that vegetation isn't necessarily the best thing to have there. We have done reports on this over the years when they periodically have done these burns before. They are trying to mitigate the risks of having wildlife living and eating around the area. Those animals, such as the deer or coyotes, can pose a risk to aircraft if they then get from the vegetation actually onto the runways and onto the airfield, and aircraft are trying to come in or out. Of course, that can be a very busy spot with the 190th Air Refueling Wing, our Kansas National Guard aircraft that are in that area. That's why they want to mitigate those risks of having wildlife living around the airfield, because they might run out, pose a risk to the aircraft. So they do this sometimes in the spring, sometimes in the fall, and that is what you are seeing right now. Again, this is the view from our Menninger Hill camera, where you can see the smoke and haze hanging over the capital city today. If you take a look from our downtown camera at Axe and Ale on Evergy Plaza, you can see it kind of shrouding the taller buildings that we have there downtown as you look up into the air. This is kind of going across that south-southwest side of town, and a little bit hazy as you look from the Jayhawk camera toward the State House dome as well, but not quite as obvious as it is when you take a look from the Menninger Hill camera. This one is kind of up in the air and kind of looking down across the city, and you can really see here, especially that southwest side of town, the smoke and haze hanging in the air. If you walk outside and you see that around Topeka, if you smell it in the air, once again, this is a controlled burn of some of that dry vegetation around Topeka Regional Airport and Forbes Field. As authorities do this a couple times a year, they do these controlled burns to get rid of that dry vegetation and mitigate the risks that are posed when they have the wildlife like the deer and the coyotes eating around there. Sometimes they can get out onto the airfield and pose a risk to some of the aircraft that are there. Just wanted to take a moment and explain that situation, let you know what is going on. We'll take you back to LNL. Remember, keep it right here on your WIBW Plus live streams. We'll have Midday in Kansas coming your way at noon.